and what has had kind of a pivotal impact on my life is taking chances and position yourself in a way where people want to take chances on you. Whether that's, friends that end up helping you build companies, or investors that invest in them, or customers trying your minimal viable product.
Yeah.
Position yourself in a way where people want to take that chance.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back, Championship Leadership Podcast. We got Daniel Idzkowski here out of San Francisco, California. Appreciate you being here, Daniel. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Nate. It's really good to be here.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. So Championship Leadership's the name of the podcast. What comes to mind for you? What does that mean to you when you hear that?
Championship leadership, that's a pretty big kind of topic. For me, the foundation of leadership is really self-improvement. I think it's a constantly changing environment, and I think a true leader is always constantly looking to better themselves and learn how to inspire and invigorate people. But of course, that's a really big topic. But for me, it's about self-improvement.
Self-improvement. I love it. Yeah, I would agree. I think, I like to say, to lead others, you got to lead yourself first, right? So I think that's where that self-improvement comes big time. Be the example. Where does that come from for you? Like, why is that top of mind? Why is that kind of the first thing you think of when you hear that championship leadership?
I guess a lot of it for me is because just my personal ethos. I try to, my goal is, I don't have these like massive goals necessarily. I try not to set too strict expectations of myself or others, but I do have one overarching goal, which is I want every single subsequent day to be just a little bit better than the last, and I want to be a little bit better than the last. And this is kind of the finance investing mind. I always think of compound interest as a good kind of proxy for that. Even if you improve just a small little bit on a daily basis, that compounds over time. Yeah,
good. Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and how you've gotten to where you are? I know current project and company called SIDEPOCKET, but I know we've talked a little bit, and your story starts a little bit before that, obviously. So yeah, share with us for the listeners that aren't familiar with who you are and what you're up to, what that is.
Sure. Yeah, my story starts, a long time ago, actually. I think really a lot of my kind of strive to be entrepreneurial and build things and help people and have impact really comes from probably my parents' story. And for the most part, I think it stems from really taking chances, and especially people that have been willing and able to take chances on me throughout my life. It started with my parents taking a chance and leaving the then communist Poland and coming to the United States, hopefully for a better life in America, and then eventually taking a chance and starting a small flower business. And then eventually, my grandparents taking even bigger chance and coming here and following suit.
Oh, wow.
Various investors and that have been willing to take massive chances at investing in some of my crazy ideas over the years, and the people that have been willing to take a chance on working with me to see them into fruition, with really no guarantees of success, right?
Yeah.
So I really applaud and respect everybody that I've worked with over the last decade or more. But I guess the kind of projects that I've come to be known for, one of them was a bicycle lock that basically explodes with noxious chemicals when a thief cuts it. And it sounds like a crazy idea, and and I
Sounds
think
like something out of Mission Impossible or something.
right. But it needed to be crazy. It needed to be crazy because my goal with that company wasn't just solving the bike theft problem. The problem at its core was that every single bike lock company in the world was lying to people.
Mm.
They were actively hiding the fact that angle grinders, these power tools, can cut through any bike lock within seconds. They were advertising different kinds of steel, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, the innovation on power tools far exceeded that of bicycle locks.
Yeah.
Who wants to solve a problem if it means less profit for them down the line, right?
Yeah, right.
But I wasn't particularly happy with this situation. So my goal number one was to expose these companies. Because originally, we could have easily put all the R&D into just building a better lock. But we needed exposure, right? The number one thing was telling the story. And as it turns out, if you do things a certain way, and that way is with, the customer in mind, and good-heartedly, it generally gets picked up by a lot of different news publications, and people are willing to share your story. So we were able to accomplish that quite well. And at this point, I don't think anyone that's a cyclist that I know personally is not familiar with what an angle grinder is. At least they're aware now. If they use, a crappy, cheap lock for $20 or $30, they know that it can be cut within 5 seconds. Where a few years ago, they weren't aware of that. They weren't aware of the risks. So through that, I kind of built a reputation for myself, I guess, where, I really like exposing companies that are lying to people, that are not doing things for the benefit of their customers. They're doing things for the benefit of themselves. Their moral compass is not driven by doing the right thing. It's by purely profits. So I really enjoy working on things that are trying to right the wrongs in many ways. And that's what really keeps me motivated. And SIDEPOCKET, which is my newest venture, is kind of a continuation of that in many ways. There's so much misinformation in the wealth management industry and investment industry. There's so many lies being told by people that are, financial advisors even. Turns out the majority of people don't have a financial advisor. I read a statistic a few years ago that said roughly 99% of Americans that have investable capital do not have a financial advisor. And this seemed strange to me. I dug into it, and the truth is they missed out a bit of wording there. The truth is 99% of Americans with investable capital do not have a licensed financial advisor. So they are getting financial advice from, as it turns out, that friend that they trust, that was always good at math and money, and and they're a responsible person generally, but they're not a licensed financial advisor, right? So I found that really interesting. And I don't necessarily blame all of the misinformation on the fact that most people aren't licensed, because even licensed financial advisors spread misinformation.
Right.
A lot of the reason behind that is because times have changed, right? Virtually every single financial advisor, when you go and you have an IRA or a 401k or even a brokerage account, and you go to a financial advisor and you say, I want to invest my capital, they use what's called strategic asset allocation, which is derived from modern portfolio theory, which is a thesis of Harry Markowitz that I developed, over 60 or 70 years ago at this point. So the world has changed pretty fundamentally. A part of that theory was Basically, that different asset classes were not perfectly correlated, like let's say US equities and European equities. So if you add multiple different asset classes into a portfolio, you will get the benefit of diversification.
Diversification, right? Yeah.
Diversification. As it turns out, these days, due to globalization, the correlation between, say, US and European equities is significantly higher than it used to be, as you might imagine. Most large corporations operate globally. But during a black swan event, as it turns out, correlations approach nearly 1. So right when you need diversification and that benefit and that protection the most, you don't have it, right? Everything collapses when things are collapsing, right? And we saw this during the pandemic. We saw this in 2022. Bonds were not a safe haven. So some of the lies that are told are, you can, one being, you can research a company enough, for example, and if you research it enough, you can pick the right ones, and then you can beat the market.
Yeah.
And people reference Warren Buffett, and that's called, broadly speaking, value investing. As it turns out, Warren Buffett really made most of his money doing private equity. And I think that approach does still work if the company's not publicly traded, but finding these mispricings and is just not really viable anymore for a normal investor. And it requires a lot of time. And more importantly, the time horizon that you need in order to see the value of value investing is much longer than what most people are willing to wait. They might wait a few years, and if stock hasn't popped yet, they'll sell it, because they need to buy a house, or they need to, pay for medical expenses and so on. So that's 2 kind of fallacies just right there. The benefit of diversification is not sufficient if you just buy different ETFs. You need an additional layer of or signal, as they call it in the industry, of potentially market timing and tactical asset allocation in order to really protect your downside and your drawdown. So I think the big thing that's been the big secret in the industry is people have been told markets go up and down, and your portfolio will lose, a significant percentage at least once every 10 years, like what we've seen in 2022. On average, most people are down about 20 to 25% on their portfolio. As it turns out, some people, if they were investing in crypto, are down as much as 50%.
Yeah.
As it turns out, that relationship is not linear between losses and the gains required just to break even. When you lose 50%, you need 100% gains just to break even. When you lose 20%, you need 25% gains just to break even. And it's not intuitive to most people. And we're just told and are expected to accept that losses in a portfolio happen, and don't worry, you just wait them out and things will bounce back. But the truth is, those losses, even though they're paper losses, you don't sell the stocks, you don't sell the ETFs, compounded over 20 or 30 years, your time horizon on a retirement portfolio result in 2 or 3 times worse performance. It's the difference between you actually retiring at 67 or disappointed in where your portfolio is and it hasn't kept up with inflation, and you have to work until you're 77 now. And that's, we're on track for tens of millions of Americans being in a situation where they've been told that don't worry about it. You're going to get 7% per year over the next 30 years. And that's just not going to be enough. And it's probably not going to happen. I mean, we've been in a very unique economic environment where there has been a significant amount of innovation. Interest rates, for the most part, have been incredibly low. And inflation, for the most part, has been fairly low, given the Fed printing this much capital. The probability that we're going to be able to do 7 to 8% on average in a classic 60-40 portfolio, stocks to bonds over the next 30 years, similarly to how we did in the last 30 years, is statistically zero. And no one's talking about this. So it's a pretty big problem that I see, and everybody's kind of playing the same game, and nobody's really tackled a solution. Everyone's going after the shiny objects like cryptocurrencies and SPACs and stuff like that. But I think it's more important to go after where 99% of the capital is. So
how does SIDEPOCKET come into that? What's to help resolve all of that you were just talking about?
Yeah, so SIDEPOCKET at its core is kind of a deep tech. A good analogy for deep tech is something that is a very difficult problem to solve that took many, many years of research and development. Google is a good proxy for it. The best deep tech is where in the background, it's something incredibly hard to do, and it's a very valuable thing to solve. But in the foreground, it seems pretty simple. You know, Google had a bunch of funny colored letters, Google, and a single search bar. You didn't have to know how PageRank worked in the back end, right?
Right.
And which is infinitely complex, especially today. So SIDEPOCKET is a deep tech that essentially is a number of different algorithms, an algorithmic approach to investing that is designed specifically to protect your portfolio from drawdown or losses from the peak to the bottom. So the drawdown of the S&P 500 for 2022, for example, is 25%. With SIDEPOCKET, the goal is to limit that drawdown through more active rebalancing and actively looking at the market, applying statistical models to the market, and then rebalancing on average monthly to limit that loss to 5% maximum. It depends on which model you invest in.
Sure.
But the implications of that is SIDEPOCKET is actually quite a bit in the positive on the year, but the implication of that over the long term is really that just by reducing that loss in a bear market or a drawdown in 30 years, that's going to be hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in some cases of more money in your retirement portfolio. So it has really meaningful implications. You don't have to take massive risks. This isn't about day trading and putting all your money on black at a roulette table, right? This isn't about maximizing gains. You don't have to return 20, 30, 40% per year on your portfolio like hedge funds do. You just have to not lose money. And there's an interesting kind of paper that was written on this, which effectively explored 3 different scenarios. If you just held the market for the last 30 years, if you were able to invest in the 10 best days in the market over the last 30 years, and if you were just able to avoid the 10 worst days, which one do you think performed the best?
Well, based on our conversation, I'm going to go with the 10 worst days.
Absolutely right. So if you were just able to avoid the 10 worst days over the last 30 years, you would have performed significantly better than any other portfolio out there.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 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 That's very interesting. I love it. And yeah, I had, most people would say, the 10 best days, right?
Right. They would say the 10 best days. If I can get those wins, I'm in good shape.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. So how do you go from bike locks to SIDEPOCKET?
That's a great question. I actually started my career in the hedge fund world. So you could say I'm a recovering hedge fund quant. So that was always my background, was in money. But, my parents being immigrants, I had really 3 options. doctor, lawyer, or, financier, right? You had to make money and take care of the family. And that's a immensely high priority as a first generation immigrant. And that's kind of across the board seemed to be true for friends of mine in the same boat. But I can't memorize things like you need for a lawyer. I don't like blood, so I picked the third option. I didn't end up staying in that world very long because, frankly, it wasn't very fulfilling using my skills to make a small percentage of the population wealthier that's already wealthy. So I wanted to build things. I wanted to have a little bit, more impact. So I took the entrepreneurial route. And one of the other things I really loved doing was cycling and riding motorcycles, anything on wheels involving adrenaline. I love it. So as soon as I've had a number of bikes stolen, so it was a very personal problem for myself and my co-founder. And the final straw was really a friend of ours had his bike stolen, broad daylight outside a supermarket. And he had, at the time, the best, strongest, and most expensive bike lock on the market.
Yeah.
And because it was so exposed, somebody in the store actually did take pictures of this theft. Okay. So we saw what he looked like, we saw the tool.
Yeah.
And this was supposed to be unique German steel, right? I didn't know what makes steel different. Do they grow it in Germany or something?
Right. Yeah.
She said it took less than 10 seconds.
Wow. Yeah.
And this, $5,000 bike disappeared forever.
Yeah.
And he went straight to the police, made a report, and they're like, this is like the 50th today, right? And basically they said, without saying it, we're not planning on doing anything about it. And he's like, but this is his face. This is a picture of him.
Yeah.
So it made it clear, one, bike lock companies are lying to people. And two, this is the lowest priority. We're on our own. Cyclists are on our own. This is the lowest possible priority for police. It's not a murder. It's not a serious crime. It's a slap on the wrist. You don't even get jail time for that in San Francisco. Right. So that was really a pivotal moment for me. And I realized, it needs to be fixed. And at the minimum, we need to expose these other companies and change how things are done. So that was kind of the story of how I got into Skunklock, and I explored various other things along the way, but that was really a personal one for me.
Sure. Yeah, I wondered. Yeah. Well, what's a moment for you, kind of like a critical moment, fork in the road, right? And obviously you decided the way you did, which has you where you are today, but had you, made a different decision, you could be in a very different place. Like, I think there's a lot of people in those moments, especially after the last couple of years. And I think there's a lot of power or strength in hearing how others have decided in those moments. So you got something that comes to mind as ASAP?
Yeah. I remember this vividly too, because it was probably the most difficult decision in my life. And I left the hedge fund world really early in my career. My parents don't really have a lot of wealth, so they can't really sustain me, right? How some others might be in that fortunate situation. But I really wanted to pursue a different path, an entrepreneurial path. It's just, I did it a little bit earlier than most entrepreneurs do. Now that I'm also kind of an investor and also involved in other things on the venture capital side and working with startups at various accelerators, I see all the data points. I see thousands of startups a year, and most founders are, former Google, former Facebook, former Uber, and they've made a few $1 million already in equity. They're not struggling when they start their first company, let's say. They don't need to pay themselves a salary. They're not going to go hungry. They're not even eating ramen. That's the vast majority of founders.
Okay.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
So I made this, in hindsight, somewhat irresponsible decision to to try to, take up odd jobs, but spend most of my day trying to build things.
Mhm.
And you can never kind of really understand the meaning of something until you really look back and see the outcome. But I see vividly how I approach companies, people, technology, innovation is fundamentally different because I had that experience as a bootstrapped, struggling founder that had one meal a day and was sleeping on friends' couches, for years, than those that never had that real struggle. And it's taught me some really unique things, like how to market things without a marketing budget. How do you get people behind your story without any money? Because every marketing consultant that I talk to talks to me about their experience and why they're qualified to work with any of my projects or any of my companies. And they talk about their experience and they say, oh, at company X, I had a $12 million marketing budget. This is how I spent it. But they never talk about how they would approach that same problem if they had a $0 marketing budget.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really the reality as a startup founder. In most cases, you have $0.
Yeah. Right.
And it makes me wonder how many founders who have great ideas, have great ability to build products, but do never learn how to really market it without a massive marketing budget. Because nobody is going to give you a massive venture round before you built the product and got some sort of traction, at least.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder how many products are really missing from society, and that kind of makes me sad.
Yeah. No, that's a great question too. As we start to wrap this up, if there's one or two things that, that like guiding principles, I guess, or items that if the listener right now were to apply in their life, help move their life forward, what that might be.
Yeah, I think going back to my original thought, and what has had kind of a pivotal impact on my life is taking chances, and position yourself in a way where people want to take chances on you. Whether that's, friends that end up helping you build companies, or investors that invest in them, or customers trying your minimal viable product.
Yeah.
Position yourself in a way where people want to take that chance. And I learned this from my parents being florists. When they came to pursue the American dream, for some reason, all the Polish people in San Francisco, their niche was flowers.
Yeah.
And what I learned about the flower business is that it has nothing to do with selling flowers, and 100% to do with customer service and how you treat your customers.
Yeah.
People would come in and buy a couple flowers just to talk to my mom, or talk to my dad about their problems.
That's awesome.
And that was such a pivot. Like every once in a while, I would joke with my friends and say, "Hey, we're actually in the mafia," because after hours, a bunch of my mom's and my dad's friends would come by, and they were all bankers in downtown San Francisco. And there's just at like 7:00 p.m. there's a bunch of guys drinking beer at a flower shop in suits.
That's
and
awesome.
My friend would pass by every once in a while. He's like,
"What's going on in there?"
But I learned, it's all about how you treat people, and that's why every single company I start, I want a degree of empathy. And my number one goal is to have an open line of communication. That we have nothing to hide in terms of what we're doing, because at the core, we're trying to do something that is going to better society, not just make us rich. Every other corporation, and having incredible, customer service, I think is just really important.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, absolutely. It's all about the people for sure. I think that's true in leadership as well. What are a couple ways that we can find out more about what you're up to and your new project, side project, Pocket? And I don't know if you're on social media at all, or is there a way to follow you there?
Yeah, absolutely. So SidePocket it's just sidepocket.com. We were fortunate enough to get the
Nice. Yeah.
.com. And we are gearing up for a big launch in January. So we're going to be
Okay.
accepting, new clients and no more wait list, all that fun stuff.
Awesome. That's
So
exciting. Yeah, I hopped on and I saw the wait list. So I was like, all right. So I'm on it.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to bringing this to people. And I
Yeah.
just wish we could have done it sooner because it would have saved trillions of dollars,
Yeah. Yeah.
American capital.
Pretty incredible that you're doing it. So excited for that. I appreciate you being on the show. And as you're listening today, if you want to hear more episodes with incredible guests just like Daniel, please stay right here and listen in to the next episode. Appreciate you being here again, Daniel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nate. Really appreciate the time.